Welcome to I Said What I Said. I'm Brad 𝐬𝐻𝐾. That's Tyson Gentry. This is a special episode where we are reacting to the college football playoff rankings. The newest edition just came out today on Tuesday before we're recording.
That's the thumbnail.
And that's the thumbnail right there. Some interesting stuff. I mean, people are starting to get heated. People are starting to get pissed. The SEC is putting their flag in. People are taking shots at my alma mater. I mean, we got stuff going all over the place. So we had to record a special episode today. Tyson, are you following along with this stuff, I'm sure, but man, what do you think about this?
Well, I missed I didn't see the release show tonight. I just got the alert on my phone. So you got to get into the fight there on the broadcast between all those guys. So I missed that part. But Brad, does nobody really understand that like this one still doesn't matter? Like none of the ones matter for another 3-4 weeks?
It's funny because I feel like people forget that, right? Like it's people are tweaking out. Like the online discourse. I know you're not on social media much. You're not on X at all. But I mean, people are like, well, does anybody think that Penn State and Indiana aren't better than – or does anybody really believe that they're better than Alabama or Tennessee? I'm like, oh, you mean the teams that lost to like teams that are worse than them? Like, what are you talking about? Like, so it's a whole thing. So we're going to get into that. We're going to go through this entire thing, talk about where we see this. But like Tyson said, we still got 2 more games left in the regular season. We still got a conference championship weekend. We got time for this all to make sense. And that's why college football is so great because people get so pissed about it.
Yeah, it's the best. This is the best thing in the entire world. And these rankings have gotten really fun. Again, like we talked about last week, is it makes the bottom half of the top 25 matter a heck of a lot more. And there's a little bit of posturing going on here by the committee with some of these programs.
So 1 through 5 has not changed. Oregon's 1. They survived the upset bid against Wisconsin. Ohio State is 2. Texas is 3. Penn State 4. Indiana 5. So your top 5 stays the same. Now Notre Dame is 6. Alabama is 7th. Miami is 8th. Ole Miss 9th. Georgia 10th. So there's your 1 through 10. Now Tennessee off a loss. They moved down to 11. Boise State is 12th as a group of 5 representative. SMU 13th. They are hovering around. They're going to need to make a late push here. And we'll go through the bracket here in a little bit. BYU, they lose. They're 14th. They are on the outside looking in, basically. I mean, they have to win the conference championship. They could still get in that way. But they're in trouble if they don't. Texas A&M 15, Colorado 16. They're lurking in the Big 12. Clemson's going to need some help at 17. South Carolina 18. Army 19. Tulane 20. So there's an interesting thing here in the American because they are already locked into the conference championship game. So we'll talk about that in those scenarios. And then to round it out, Arizona State up to 21. They've had a great season. Iowa State still in there at 22. Missouri somehow after losing last weekend is 23. Then UNLV creeps in here at 24, which is another interesting thing for Boise State. And then Illinois back in at number 25. So we'll go through the matchups. We'll go through what it means, all that stuff. What's your first impression when you see this?
Throw the whole ACC away. I don't need to see any. I know one of them got to get in, but I mean, come on. Miami's sitting here right now on this ranking. They come in at 8, which would give them the 3rd overall seed in the 12-team playoff bracket. That comes with a bye. That comes with playing the winner of 6 versus 11, and all that stuff's fine and dandy, and that's the way these things have to work. But as you run through this, it's like, man, what's the line on a Miami Ole Miss game or a Miami Georgia game or a Miami Tennessee game? I think all 3 teams below them are probably favored at this point, but that's why you play the games. And so I'm not going to sit here and freak out. This does seem to me, Brad, like maybe – just maybe the last 20 years of SEC dominance might have gotten to some people's heads in the South here. It feels weird to not be 1 through 5.
Which is funny because now they're doing – well, our schedule is just so much harder than everybody's.
It means more.
Just means more. It's a gauntlet of a schedule, really. I mean, if you look at it, it's like, sure, but Alabama shouldn't be losing to Vanderbilt. Like Ole Miss shouldn't be losing to an unranked LSU team. Like – who lost to USC, but apparently that was a bad win now for USC, so they get discounted. So that's the whole thing. It is funny. I think the posturing is funny. When we look at it, that we've talked about it on our previous episodes, I don't think there's a team with 3 losses that gets in. Like, I know all the people pounding the desk for the SEC. I just don't think there's a chance. I mean, you look at SMU, they're sitting here with 1 loss. If they have 2 losses, let's say they lose in the conference championship game in the ACC, I think they'd have a better case than somebody with 3 losses in the SEC. I don't care that they all think that they played each other and there's nepotism there. So that continues to be my thought process here.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like Tennessee going to 11 is like, well, they're still the 11th ranked team in the country, but that also puts them on the outside looking in for the 12-team playoff, and it's going to be really hard for them to move up outside of some major chaos. But with my biggest question to you here, sir, is Notre Dame is sitting here at 6. Can Notre Dame survive a loss to Army and still make this thing?
Boy, oh boy, that is tough. I think on the surface I would say yes, but when you look at it, that would be 2 losses to G5 teams for Notre Dame. They haven't really played anybody else in terms of, compared to the SEC, compared to, you look at the Big Ten, I think that's huge for Indiana if Notre Dame loses this weekend. What do you drop them to? 12, maybe 11 they lose, but Tyson, it'd be hard for me to look at that and say yes, because then Army would play a Tulane team. Let's say Tulane beats Army. Army would only have 1 loss. That's to Tulane. Tulane has 2 losses. They should be better than Notre Dame, you would think. So I would say I'll make a bold prediction. If Notre Dame loses this weekend, they're out.
They're out. I love that. That's what I believe would happen too. Dollars talk, money talks, and that's important to keep in mind when these rankings come out. You look at your significant other, whoever you're watching the re-show with, and you go, "Wow, that was interesting." I think there's a reason some of these teams are where they are.
So we'll get into scenarios, but let's just talk about the bracket too, so everybody kind of has an idea of where this is if you haven't seen it yet. So the number 1 overall seed would be Oregon. That's assuming they win the Big Ten championship, and this is just how it looks right now, if this is how it would play out. So number 1 seed, Oregon. Number 2 seed would be Texas as the SEC champs. Number 3 seed would be Miami as the ACC champs. And then number 4 would be Boise State, the 4th team getting a bye, as the highest ranked team ahead of the Big 12 and ahead of anybody else, as a conference champion. So that would be huge for G5 level football. Number 5 would be Ohio State. They would be hosting BYU as the 12th team. Number 6 would be Penn State hosting the 11th ranked Georgia Bulldogs. Number 7 would be Indiana hosting the 10th ranked Ole Miss Rebels. And then number 8 would be Notre Dame hosting number 9 ranked Alabama. Those are banger games. I'm looking at that here. If this plays out, Tyson, of course it benefits Ohio State the most. Just does anybody get luckier in the country than Ohio State? You play BYU, everybody hates. Then you go play a G5 team in Boise State. Yeah, sure, you got to go to the Smurf turf. But come on. And it's just always works out for Ohio State. Funny how that happens. Yeah,
it is interesting. But they do deserve to be the number 1 team. That won't be a conference winner if everything holds, obviously.
I agree.
And I think that's fair. It is fun to pile on them, though, and catching BYU is going to be the dream. That's why people are saying, maybe the best spot to be in here is maybe the 5 or the 6. Oregon, you said, is in at the 1 if they win out and win the Big Ten title. I think if it's close, they're probably going to hold on to that 1 spot regardless. But if Oregon does go undefeated and they do win the Big Ten championship, you have no choice but to make Boise State a first-round bye team. Boise State loses to them as time expires earlier this season. Other than that, the record is unblemished. They now have a win over a conference rival that peaks. UNLV got to 25. Is that correct?
Yep, they're 24.
24, so that's even better there for Boise State. But I think that there is some correlation there that you can't, on one hand say, well, Boise State doesn't deserve this, and then, look at the resume. The Boise State is your NCAA 25 football team when you're playing on your Xbox and you just started a random program, and some games you win by 40, some games you win by 7 because you turned shoe clock on. That's kind of the way this season feels. They're just winning.
They are winning. I thought they were in big trouble against San Jose State. They should have, honestly, they had a goal line stand, or else they would have been down 21-0, picked the ball off. And they staved off elimination, dominated in the second half, so the score looks a little bit better. They've been playing a little bit with their food. Now, I think it's interesting here that the committee put UNLV at 24th, because if Colorado State loses a game, UNLV now is in the conference championship game. That's another ranked win for Boise State. It'd be harder if Boise State wins to put a Tulane, to put an Army above them, just like you said, because their only loss is a 3-point game to Oregon, right? The number 1 team in the country. So, you cannot bump Boise State. On the road, yes, for that resume. That's extremely tough. But I think it's interesting here. There's a lot of momentum for Tulane right now.
They're the best group of 5 team in the country. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what these rankings say. You line them up with Boise State. You line them up with Army. We're going to find out. Maybe I'm wrong in a couple of weeks. I think as of today, if there was a play-in NBA style to get in here with all these G5 teams, Tulane is walking through everybody.
So that's what we're going to get in the AAC championship game, right? So Tulane's going to be in there. Now they have to beat Memphis. They're on a bye this weekend. So next weekend they play Memphis. Memphis can spoil this whole thing. They were supposed to be one of the teams in here. They were supposed to be the Army and the Tulane, and they stumbled and were not able to really kind of capitalize on their ceiling. They have an opportunity to shake this entire thing up. Because if they, Tulane's got 2 losses. They're both the G5 teams, Kansas State and Oklahoma. But for Tulane, having Army there at 19, Army could – Tyson, they could be out of the top 25 after this weekend if they lose to Notre Dame. Now, I think that'd be a little bit harsh when you're considering it's the number 6 team in the country. But if Army is able to win this and Tulane beats Army 1-1, do you think that there's a chance? I mean, it's insane to say. I don't think it's possible, but 3 G5 teams?
No shot, brother. I don't think they're doing that to us. As much as we might want it as college football sickos, this is a television product that they got to get the rest of the country interested in. And if Indiana steals a spot that's already won, kind of non-blue blood, like it's a team and a university everybody's heard of, but nobody, outside of the college football world is really excited right now about Indiana football. But they can look at it and they can say, "Oh, I know Ole Miss or I know Georgia," and maybe sit down and watch a game. If you say, "Well, Tulane's playing BYU in the first round of the college football playoff," they're going to think you're talking FCS.
Let's talk about Indiana, because I mean that they are the subject of vitriol and disgust, and people aren't ready. I don't like. Why can't people just enjoy what Indiana's doing? Like, why does it have to turn into hate? They won too much, right?
If there
was a fun story, and now yeah.
They were 9-1. Nobody would care. It'd be nice. They'd be sitting at 14, and people would say, "Look at how cool it is that Indiana's up here." But everybody loves the underdog story until your spot gets threatened. And that's where the SEC vitriol is coming from right now, is because this happens to us. If Vanderbilt was undefeated, they obviously would deserve 5. But Indiana they didn't play anybody. That's not fair. It's not our fault that Michigan's in a down year and they bodied them when they played them. It's not our fault that they put 45 on Michigan State, both of which are Big Ten programs, right? But that doesn't count, really. I mean, let's be honest, people. Indiana is last year's Michigan. We said it earlier. If you swap logos or you swap jerseys and you just go blind rankings, this team is really good. Do they deserve to be the number 5 team in the country? I suppose you can have a conversation about that. Maybe resume-wise, absolutely. They're undefeated. They should probably be higher than they are. Everybody calm the hell down. We're going to find out on Saturday when they play Ohio State.
The whole Indiana thing is where I'm wondering going forward, what do we value in the CFP? Right? Do we is it about rewarding teams for winning football games? Because I thought that's why you play the game, right? Like that's why everybody was pissed. Remember in the BCS, all the computers deciding it, and normally it was the 2 best teams. But in the 4-team era, all of a sudden, it's mainly your conference champions. We value that, but with the way that the things were set up, with the 2 sides, somebody was playing a favorable schedule, the other person wasn't. Maybe there's a team better that probably should have been there. We've seen that. So this was supposed to be finally like, okay, you play your schedule, you win and take care of it. You're going to be in 12 teams. And now people are trying to change it. We're like, well, does anybody think that Indiana is better than Georgia? Oh, maybe not. But Indiana's won all of their games this year. That's why you play the sport. You can't discredit that. Like, I don't care. Like, nobody's saying that, I don't know, like freaking Hawaii should be in this. I mean, because, again, Hawaii's not undefeated. If they were, that's a different conversation. It's not Indiana's fault that they have this strength of schedule. Like they weren't like, no, I'm cherry picking this. Unlike the SEC, who's playing freaking FCS schools in the middle of their conference schedule. By the way, guys, you guys play such a gauntlet. Oh, we just need a break. Well, Big Ten's not. They have freaking 4 of the top 5 teams in the country. Yeah, I mean, it's a joke like how everybody's trying to move the field goal here. Indiana has taken care of business. Indiana has won football games. That is the purpose every time you step on the field. And you should be rewarded for that. If you just want to do all the 12 best teams and this point spreads and power ratings, that's completely ridiculous. I mean, then what's even the point of going out there? We'll just flip a coin. It's just a recruiting battle. And then, okay, you guys go play for a championship. Everybody else will go stand in the corner with their dicks in their hands.
If Indiana beats Ohio State by 2 scores, and I don't believe that's going to happen, but if it does happen, the committee's going to look in the mirror. because Oregon's sitting there at the 1 spot because they beat Ohio State and because of the slide with 0 seconds. I know Oregon's had a tough schedule, and we knew who Oregon was coming into the season. But I'm just saying, if they're undefeated and they have a handy win over Ohio State, then all of a sudden this number 5 thing means nothing. Let's get them all the way up to 1.
Well, especially because Oregon, I mean, they were on the ropes against Wisconsin. They should have lost to Boise State, in my opinion. They played with their food a little bit. I mean, even the Ohio State game. Ohio State, I'll tell you this. If Ohio State does beat Indiana this weekend and they beat Oregon, I would be surprised if Ohio State's the number 1 team in the Big Ten.
I think that would be accurate, to be honest with you. I think that they're the number 2 team in the country right now, in my estimation, and in the college football playoff committees. And so, if they went out and they get their get back on Oregon, assuming it's less crazy than the way they lost, they absolutely are the number 1 team in the country.
Let's talk about some of these middling teams. I'm curious to get your thoughts, like what they can do, because it's 12 teams, but with the format you see, SMU's 13, but they don't have a shot, unless they win the ACC, really, if you're looking at the bracket. So let's talk about A&M. Let's talk about Colorado. We kind of know their path. Let's talk about Clemson. Kind of know their path. South Carolina. Those teams 15 through 18. I mean, what is it? So Colorado and Clemson, if they win the ACC, they win the Big 12 they're in. So we kind of understand that. But for A&M in South Carolina, what do they need to do? What do they need to happen for them to be playing in this thing?
Well, A&M is probably the most interesting out of all this, because if they beat the brakes off of Texas, then maybe they do deserve to be in this 12-team playoff here. But again, we're talking about some of these SEC schools with multiple losses here, and it gets a little hairy. South Carolina is really interesting to me because I think they're better than Texas A&M. I really do. If they lined them up and played right now, I think South Carolina wins. I don't think South Carolina got enough good equity built up early in the season to close this gap. If they were sitting there at 15, it's potential. But I think once you get past, and this is excluding the G5 schools, because we laid out how Army can make it, how Tulane can make it. Outside of Colorado winning the Big 12 or Arizona State sneaking in somehow and winning the Big 12, or Clemson winning the ACC, I feel like most of this, 15 through 25 is window dressing.
It's interesting. We try to predict, how many teams from each conference are going to get in. And if you look at the projected bracket, and I honestly, Tyson, I think this is how it's going to play out. 4 Big Ten teams: Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, Indiana. 4 SEC teams: Texas, Ole Miss, Alabama, Georgia. You're independent in Notre Dame. Now that could be shaky, right? Same with the 4 Big Ten teams. Those can change. But then you have 1 Big 12 and 1 ACC. Then of course your G5, who's going to get in regardless. That's pretty telling to me. I mean, so think about that in this terms. They're saying, BYU's the lone representative right now, but somebody else can slide into that spot, right? It's not saying, there's another Big 12 team that we can maybe get 2 in there. Like we thought, right? When Kansas State was looking good and Iowa State was looking good, Colorado come up. The committee's basically telling you right now, based on these rankings, it's going to be 1 Big 12 team. Same with the ACC. Whoever wins, whether it's SMU, Clemson would be interesting with the 2 losses, but they get an automatic berth, and then or Miami. That's interesting to me. Do you have an issue with that? I know you kind of took a pot shot at ACC. The ACC, we don't necessarily like the ACC in terms of what they bring to the table, but what do you think about that?
I think that's accurate. That's the way kind of we thought all year. We did this exercise before the season started, and that's pretty much exactly where we landed. We don't know who's going to win the Big 12 right now, so that makes it interesting, and we don't necessarily know who's going to win the ACC, but I will say it does feel maybe in the national media or national kind of consciousness, SMU just is slept on and almost disregarded as they're the 3rd team in the ACC, right? They're the hottest team in the freaking country almost right now. And they almost lost to Boston. Did you watch the game? Come on, give me a break. SMU looks awesome. They look shaky a little bit at times on Saturday, but when's the last time Miami got through a game and looked just fine? Did 𝐃𝐨𝐽 do or did not have to have a 50-yard touchdown run to escape Virginia? Tony Elliott, come on.
So on FanDuel Sportsbook, Miami is the favorite plus 105 to win the ACC. SMU the second favorite plus 150. Clemson plus 450. Now they're on the outside looking in, right? They have the losses. The one loss, SMU hasn't had one in conference. Miami, they have one in conference, but they should, but they have the tiebreaker. Big 12, Colorado is now your favorite at plus 100. BYU second, plus 310. Arizona State, plus 350. Those are your three, I think. I mean, Iowa State plus 750. Kansas State has no chance now, plus 13,000. So Iowa State needs some help. But so those are your teams here, Tyson. As we're like moving it down, I mean, we know what the path is. Colorado, after beating Texas Tech, they have a chance. I mean, a real opportunity here. They're better than BYU, I think. So if we're looking who's on the outside, who's going to make this thing, Colorado at 16, there is a big chance that they could be a top 4 seed by the time this thing is done.
And Colorado would make a ton of money in this deal. It'd be really fun. It'd get a lot of eyes on it. So, like, if they just went out, they're in. But tune into our college football show where we kind of break down last weekend and look ahead to next weekend, because I got some thoughts on Kenny Dillingham and the boys. I don't think Arizona State's dead.
I love it. This is a CFP show that we wanted to do. The good thing is, like Big Cat always says, once we expand to 16 teams, we won't have these arguments anymore. Obviously, being tongue-in-cheek.
Doing it for decades.
Being tongue-in-cheek, this is what's great about college football. I'm super glad that we can have these arguments, because the more teams we can argue about, the better it is for everybody. These times that these keep getting released continue to be crazy and all off the board. There's no consistency. So we're not sure when we're going to do another episode here. It could be next week. It could be just in our long-form episode, like Tyson said, but that'll be coming out. Our long-form episode will be coming out later this week, so pay attention to that. With that being said, guys, just like to subscribe and share the show. Smash on the way out. Share it with a friend. Share it with me, whatever the case may be. We appreciate you guys tuning into this. We got a bunch of content coming out for you later in the week, so we'll speak to you guys then. Peace.